Hi,
Hi.
Oh, sorry, Zach.
Hi, folks. Welcome to our webinar Wednesday, Take Action for CAR edition. Tonight we'll be going over the basics of the Central African Republic through the background into the current events, and then what you can do to mobilize your community and make change in the Great Lakes region. Tonight we are joined by Brian Liu, who is Stan's CAR Conflict Education Coordinator. Brian is a second year at George Washington University and will be filling us all in on the history of the Central African Republic as well as what is going on the ground. My name is Zachary Ackerman. I am Stan's National Outreach Coordinator in charge of Stan's grassroots efforts and getting our message out to all of our organizers across the country. I'll be going over what you can do in your communities and on your campuses, as well as walking you through a typical lobby meeting and how you can be successful when you lobby your member of Congress, which is the most effective form of advocacy. And finally, we're joined by Mac Hamilton, who is Stan's executive manager. She is our staff member who holds down the fort in our DC office. We're very grateful that she can join us to walk us through some of the policy points that you can apply to all of your campus and community organizing, as well as your lobby meetings in district or on the Hill, depending on where you live or how you're traveling. So I'm going to pass it along to Brian, who's going to start with the history of the Central African Republic.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for taking an interest in the Central African Republic. It's unfortunately an issue that receives far, far too little attention in media and foreign policy. The U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, put it as the, quote, worst conflict that no one has ever heard of. And that's rather unfortunate because it's truly a problem of monstrous proportions. For me, it's tragic for two reasons and optimistic for one. It's tragic, first off, for all the usual cited reasons, the sheer death and suffering that's occurred since 2012. 5,000 people killed, between 500,000 and 800,000, or maybe even up to 1 million internally displaced persons, 10,000 refugees, 6,000 child soldiers, and a bevy of other statistics that shock the imagination. But it's also tragic for a second reason, because this is the first instance in the Central African Republic's history, at least in recent memory, where something like this has ever happened. There's no history of religious tension between Christians and Muslims, no fissures between tribal lines, a long history of abject poverty, but never a civil war, not of the scale. Somewhere along the line, these fault lines were created arbitrarily by the actions of leaders who were not elected democratically. These were leaders who took power and maintained power through the use of military force. These were leaders who plundered treasuries and abused their peoples and left the country in the state that it is today. And that's a horrible, horrible thing. But the point for optimism. In spite of all of this, there's room for optimism because this is one of the few times where, as advocates, you can truly push for atrocity prevention before it happens, not atrocity mitigation after it happens. We have a chance here, a real chance here, to stop what could very much become a full genocide. And we can, metaphorically, stop the train before the train wreck. This is an opportunity that the international community can't pass up lightly. And our hope is that through this webinar, through events like this, and through Action4CAR, we can work together to promote this issue and to get the attention that it needs and deserves. So just to jump into the historical background, an overview first. The conflict today began in late 2012 when the Seleka militia formed officially and launched attacks all throughout the Central African Republic. culminating in a coup d'etat against toppling President Bozizé in March 2013. During this time and afterwards, the Selka militia has launched various other attacks, committed various atrocities, to the point where the Christian population formed what is known as anti-Balaka militias, or self-defense groups, which has stoked further tension between the two groups and has promoted tick-for-tack killings between the Christian and Muslim populations involved in the conflict, and unfortunately harming individuals who aren't involved in the conflict all throughout the past 3 years. The immediate conflict, as we see it today, began in late 2012, but the underlying root causes really began to foment much earlier under the Bozizé regime. Francois Bozizé, if you could move the slide over. Francois Bozizé was the Army Chief of Staff under President André Félix Pétasse, the first democratically elected Central African Republic leader for 30 years. Francois, or Mr. Bozizé, was removed from his position by President Pétasse in 2001, in part because the president had called his loyalty into question, and of course rightfully so, because he would later join the rebel efforts to overthrow him in the coup d'etat. Here you see one of the perennial issues in the Central African Republic conflict, and that is foreign intervention. A large part of why Francois Bozizé did what he did was because of the influences of outside actors like Chad. The country of Chad has very extensive oil interests in the Central African Republic, and so the Chadian president, Idriss Déby, D-E-B-Y, had supported Bozizé from the very start and supported his regime through supplying economic aid and through providing military assistance whenever protests or rebellions were to rise up. So effectively, Déby and the Chadian military would keep Bozizé in power through its military force, and the Chadian military was so intertwined with Bozizé's regime to the point where Bozizé's presidential guard, his own secret service, was composed primarily of Chadian troops. Surprisingly, France was also a key supporter of Bozizé for, again, reasons of economic interest. The largest nuclear energy company in the world, Areva, happens to have significant uranium interests in the Central African Republic. And so at various points in Bozizé's rule, the French have provided material and even military assistance to bolster his rule. But as is usual in international politics, following the post-Fukushima fallout in Japan, there was an associated drop in nuclear energy prices worldwide, and that, coupled with growing economic ties between the Central African Republic and South Africa and China, led France to play less of a role, to divest itself from the Central African Republic more so. So eventually France cut off, waned back relations between itself and Bozizé. The president of Chad also the same eventually, and in 2012 withdrew some of the Chadian troops that were assigned to his presidential detail and stopped sending in troops to quell rebellions. Unfortunately for President Bozizé, the Chadian military was one of the few things that was keeping him in power, because for a long time there were many groups in the country that were very dissatisfied with his handling of the Bush War that occurred from 2003 on, and his handling of the peace treaties that were signed between militant groups and his government in the intermediate span of time. And so when the Chadian military pulled out, it would only be a matter of time when the Salaka came into power in the vacuum. So in September 2012, the Salaka, a coalition of primarily Muslim militias, had formed and launched attacks all throughout the country. The Salaka gained rapid traction and other smaller militia groups who were also disgruntled with Bouzizi's failure to uphold terms of a ceasefire, joined the movement and marched on towards Bangui, the capital city, killing, raping, and plundering along the way. On March 24th, 2013, Salaka finally gained control of the presidential palace, and President Bouzizi fled that day to the Congo to seek asylum. If you can move to the next slide. Mikel Jitodia, the leader of the Seleka, then assumed what turned out to be eventually a very short-lived presidency. Jitodia was the head of rebel faction, the Union of Democratic Forces for Unity, that had joined with two other groups, the CPJP and the FDPC, that formed a coalition, later named the Seleka, to overthrow the Bouzizi regime. The UFDR, the group that Jitodia led initially, were active from 2003 onwards, and they were very active in attempts to overthrow Bouzizi's government early on. Eventually, they were beaten back by French forces, of course, in 2007, and were forced to sign a peace agreement with the Central African Republic government. Mr. Jitodia, over here, was eventually arrested in Benin for coordinating the overthrow efforts from there, and held in trial for over a year without being charged with any crime before Bouzizi requested that he be freed. But Bouzizi had thought that Jitodia would be of help in promoting reconciliation and peace talks with the Muslim groups in the country. It turned out he was wrong. When Bouzizi appointed Jitodia as the vice prime minister in January 2013 and brought him into the peace talks, Mikel Jitodia essentially derailed the discussions, the peace discussions throughout the entire time. So when they banded together in the Seleka coalition, the individual groups there weren't held together by a single ideology or a single cause, as many other subnational groups have. They were banded together in common cause to overthrow the Bouzizi government, but there's no unifying ideology. Some were there to simply loot and pillage. Others were there to shed blood. Others were there just to make a little extra money. But one of the common things between all of them were that they're from Muslim populations, and that became one of the single most identifiable characteristic of these groups, and they became very identifiable with the Muslim faith, which is unfortunate because religion had nothing to do with it. And that was very apparent in Jitodia's rule later on. When he became president, he indicated very clearly that he wanted to lead the country secularly. So religion isn't as big a factor in the conflict as one might think. But also because these groups are so decentralized, it would be very difficult when Jitodia took power to disband them and to take their arms away and send them home. Jitodia, even though he had founded this movement, when he came to power, tried very hard to disband it, because at that point they were they continued to loot, they continued to shed blood, they continued to commit all sorts of atrocities that were undermining his rule. And so when he tried to disband them, they refused, and they continued to do exactly at once continued on the same patterns of violence and looting that they had done before. Could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, Seleka. Okay, sorry, one more. Seleka. They drew a lot of their funding from the same sources that Bouzizi and previous Central African Republic regimes did. They plundered the country's diamonds and resources. If you look on the map here, you can see how Seleka focused its activities in areas surrounding the diamond mines. the diamond symbol being an indicator for diamond mines, and the color green, I believe, or blue, signifies the areas where silica is most involved. The illicit diamond trade is one of the major sources of funding for silica. They smuggle these diamonds through intermediaries in Darfur, Cameroon, and DRC, where they are eventually transported to Dubai, Antwerp, and India for sale. Silica was also very active in the ivory trade. In the absence of a robust wildlife protection force, the silica fighters have been able to gain access to wildlife preserves and slaughter endangered elephants by the dozens. The extracted tusks then go to Asia for sale for $28,000 to $175,000 a piece. So in response to silica, anti-Balaka groups formed. Could you go to the next slide? Composed primarily of Christians and animists, and like the silica, very decentralized and ill-trained. And they rose up to defend themselves against the silica attacks. This, of course, helped mollify and help unify the silica in a very negative way against the anti-Balaka, because now, if they didn't have a cause before them, they certainly do now. They now had a perception of the idea that Christian groups are out to get them. The Christians in the country make up somewhere between 80–85% of the country, so Muslims are a very small minority, and they felt threatened by the rise of the anti-Balaka. So the mentality of us against them fomented in the course of months of tick-for-tack, reprisal killings between now the formerly Silica, the ex-Silica, and the anti-Balaka. Unfortunately, caught up in all of this were the ordinary Christians and Muslims who had nothing to do with either side. Again, just to reiterate, there was, prior to the Silica uprising, there was no history of religious tension between the Christians and Muslims, and very few people paid attention to the distinction. Just to drive the point home a little more, there's a very curious case in 1976 when John Bedell Bokassa, the self-appointed emperor of the Central African Republic, had announced that he was converting to Islam, and he renamed himself Salah ad-Din Ahmed. The country, of course, is very much Christian, and in other contexts, the fact that their leader, their president, or the emperor was converting himself to a different religion would spark protests in many other countries. But it sparked absolutely no reaction in the Central African Republic. It turned out later that Emperor Bokassa was doing all this to cozy up to Muammar Gaddafi for foreign aid. And when he realized that he wouldn't be receiving any additional funding, he promptly converted back to Catholicism. But again, this just goes to show, in a very strange way, that really there was no history of tension or any really concern for the religious makeup of the country, or the religious makeup of even the leaders of the country. All this was arbitrarily created over the last 10–15 years as a result of the poor policies of the leaders of the Central African Republic, specifically Michel Ntshodia and Francois Bozizé. But the situation has changed very dramatically within the last 10–15 years. This conflict has driven out thousands of individuals from their families, from their homes. Families have been torn apart, either by displacement or by murder, or a variety of other reasons. There was an article a year ago on Slate where a journalist covered in a story where there was a single family that was raised Catholic, but one son had joined the Silica and the other had joined the anti-Balaka. They had both, incidentally, came back home to the mother at the same time, their home at the same time, at the same point, where the brother who had joined the anti-Balaka, upon seeing his brother down the road, had to go upstairs and hide in the closet for fear that his brother, who he'd grown up with his entire life, would kill him because he was a member of the Silica. Luckily, they patched things up, and They approached each other for the first time in 3-4 years at the point, after being separated for a long period of time, fighting with their respective groups, and they sat down and had lunch together. And it goes to show that despite the fact that this conflict has torn apart families and torn apart individuals in which various ways, there's room for reconciliation, as there has always been in the past 50 years of Central African Republic since its existence as a country. You also frequently hear of other heartbreaking stories. Mothers forced to watch their children murdered before them, Christians and Muslims fed to wild animals, beheadings and street lynchings. There's also this practice where anti-Balaka groups, in a very twisted interpretation of Sharia law, would go and remove their victims' hands and lay them on their bodies for all to see, because this was the practice in Sharia law enshrined for thieves and crooks and the lowest forms of life. And so you have all these terrible, terrible incidents, and it's a horrendous situation where it seems there's no foreseeable end. Peacekeeping forces under the UN and under French forces and under Chadian and South African commands have been deployed at various points to the Central African Republic to assist in the situation, but all the while you see that the same issues have reoccurred. The French, as I mentioned before, don't have a very positive image in the country, for one, because they're a former colonial power in Central African Republic and all throughout Africa, but also because they had sent in peacekeepers, quote-unquote peacekeepers, throughout the recent history of Central African Republic to bolster authoritarian regimes. And the same with Chad, and the same with South Africa. So you have these peacekeeping forces that aren't very well trusted by the local population, and it's caused a lot of difficulty in securing a peaceful environment for the Central African Republic. And so that really goes to show that the Central African Republic needs a domestic answer, a domestic response to the problems. The people of the Central African Republic need to be able to take control of their own situation, with foreign assistance, of course, but to take command of their own country and do so through elections. The elections in the Central African Republic are slated to be held in July or August of this year, conducted under the current transitional administration under Catherine Samba-Panza. None of the members of the transitional government are allowed to run in the elections, which is a positive step in promoting democratic norms in the country, because the Central African Republic has seen time after time again dictatorial leaders who take control over the country with low concern for the people and immediate concern for the preservation of their own power. Luckily, in this case, Captain Samba-Panza is a very well-respected individual and a very well-respected president who is expected to carry out her term and leave at the end of it. What the most crucial factor in ensuring the success of these elections is to ensure the inclusion of Muslims in the democratic process, which is the most challenging aspect to all this, because Muslim residents of the Central African Republic have been driven out en masse by, of course, the Christian anti-Balaka militias over the course of the past 10 years. And it's very crucial that you get Muslim inclusion, Muslim participation in these elections. One, because it's very important to the international community to see that the Muslims have a stake in the elections in the country, in the decision of the country, and the decision of where the country is headed. But it's also important from the domestic front because you need the people of the Central African Republic, especially the Muslim population, to feel included, so as to take away legitimacy from the Salaka militias, to take away legitimacy from violent means, and to show that the democratic process is the optimal way to lead the country forward, to ensure that a candidate who respects the rights of Muslims and Christians and can ensure the reconciliation between these two groups can be elected, and that the Central African Republic doesn't end up under the presidency or under the authority of individuals who are elected to power or who are brought into power simply to enrich their own coffers. So that's really the main overview of the situation in the Central African Republic now. And again, just to reiterate, it's Muslim inclusion in the upcoming July-August elections that's the most crucial. It's a linchpin of how to bring the country forward. And that's going to take a lot of effort from the international community and from individuals like you in local campuses across the country. Again, this is an issue that doesn't receive nearly enough attention as it should. It's an issue that unfortunately doesn't register in many policymakers' radars. And so we need individuals like you to take action for the Central African Republic. And with that said, I will pass the baton off to Zach now, who can speak more about what you can do specifically on the home front, on campuses, and on Capitol Hill.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. That was beyond informative. I really appreciate how thorough you were. I think we're all better for it. So I think this is a really good opportunity to point out that there's a questions section on your GoToWebinar control panel. If folks at any point have a question for any of the three of us, please don't hesitate to ask, and we'll probably answer them all at the end. So again, on the GoToWebinar control panel, which should have popped up on your screen when you launched the webinar, there's a question section, and I encourage you to ask anything you want, like my favorite color. So, what do we do? How do we affect change? How do we help bring peace to a region of the world that is thousands and thousands of miles away? First of all, we have to educate ourselves. We have to listen to experts and resources like Brian, like professors in relevant departments on your campus, to friends who maybe read the news more often than you. Seeking out every opportunity to educate yourself and be educated by others is critical. But what you do with that knowledge is even more important. What you do with that knowledge has to be educating others and spreading the awareness that there is conflict and that there's something that can be done, and there's something tangible that can be done here in the United States. Next, you can donate. We are partnering in this campaign, Action4CAR, with a tremendous organization called the Aegis Trust, which is based out of London, as well as Kigali, Rwanda. And what they are doing most relevant to the Central African Republic is training young peace builders, people our age and slightly older, in community building and peace building, and then taking them to the Central African Republic and having them do similar trainings as a way to increase inclusion and improve the quality of life and awareness of democratic values, as well as mutual respect and all of the things that are very much needed in a society on the edge, or in a lot of cases a society that has already crossed the edge. But programs like this do not fund themselves, and that it is so on the ground and affects both young people in the Central African Republic, but is affected by young people from Rwanda and Central Africa as a larger region, is an incredible cause, and one that you really don't get the opportunity to give to very often. So I encourage you to raise money on your campuses, in your communities, any way you can, and send it to a very worthy cause, and a very unique cause, and one that's honestly a pretty easy sell. And then the final thing, which I can speak the most to, is you can advocate. Advocate for peace in the Central African Republic, be it by writing a letter to your member of Congress, by giving your member of Congress a phone call, by tweeting or posting on the social media page of your elected officials who have actual foreign policy influence. There are 535 members of Congress, and there are only a handful of members of the cabinet who have influence in foreign affairs. It's something very tangible, and it's something that we can really accomplish if we do it intelligently and do it together. So I want to talk a little bit more about advocacy, because I am a big advocate of it. And I want to talk specifically about, oh wow, that would have been useful. Educate, donate, ideas for, educational events and fundraising events are available through our tremendous team of regional organizers, or through myself, and my contact information will be up shortly. Feel free to reach out, and we can get you ideas for how to be successful in both education and donation on your campuses. Finally, advocate. As I touched on earlier, you can write letters, you can call in, and you can schedule an in-district lobby meeting. And this is the one that, this final point, is what requires the highest buy-in. People are afraid to go in. People are nervous that they don't know enough, that they are not the professional lobbyists that members of Congress expect, or that they're going to have to fly into D.C. To make an impact, and none of that is true. And I'm going to tell you how and why. Also, I recommend checking out our CAR Weeks action kit, which you can get by emailing info@stayinnow.org, or one of your regional organizers, or me, and my email will be up in just a moment, or by visiting our website at action4car.org. So moving on to Lobbying 101. As I said earlier, my name is Zach Ackerman. I'm STAN's National Outreach Coordinator. That is the email address. If you want to get in touch with a regional organizer but don't know who that is, don't know who the appropriate regional organizer is, reach out to me. I am more than willing to connect you, because they are a really great resource and can really help you be successful on your campus. And so I also want to point out a very out-of-place picture in the corner of this slide. That is a very boring-looking building. And that very boring-looking building happens to be in the very boring suburb of Dearborn, Michigan, which is a very boring suburb of Detroit, Michigan, which is an increasingly, I suppose now decreasingly boring city in Michigan, which is the greatest state in the union. But the point being that my former employer, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, has one of her in-district offices in that very boring building. I think so often we think of Congress and we think of influencing Congress, and our mind goes to House of Cards. It goes to the West Wing. It goes to this almighty and prestigious Capitol Dome, where the powers that be exist in their own world. And that is not true. You can go to a very average office park in a very average suburb and find your member of Congress in a much more grounded environment. And that has power. And these are people who, the staff members in in-district offices, are the people who really engage with the constituencies and deal with their constituents' issues day in and day out. And these are the people who are most vested in the community that their member represents, and so have a very important and influential role in the greater office that is a House representative or senator. So never underestimate the influence that influencing a district lobby can hold. So how do we go about it? Schedule your meeting, first and foremost. So you can find, if every state has 2 senators, and then each state has a varying number of representatives. If you're not sure where you are in terms of the district map of your state, you can find out by entering your address into vote411.org, and they will tell you what district you're in and who your representative is. And from there, you can go to house.gov and find the closest in-district office to you. Most members of the House of Representatives have 2 in-district offices, and then most senators have 4 statewide offices. They're usually a couple in rural areas and a couple in urban areas. So you can probably find one not too far of a drive from you. So once you schedule your meeting, it's important that you set goals and that you understand that you are going into this meeting to do 2 things. The first of which might seem obvious. You are there to deliver your asks. You are there to express the importance and the urgency of what you want and need done, which are the free and fair and peaceful elections in the Central African Republic, and particularly what the U.S. can do tangibly to get that done. But you're also there to develop a working relationship with the staff of your senator or your representative. Congressional staffers work with thousands of constituents a week, and the only ones that they are able to really help are the ones who develop a relationship. And that relationship can be a friendship, or it can be, on the other end of the spectrum, that annoying guy who won't shut up and keeps calling my office 5 times a day. But you'd be surprised, on that spectrum, those 2 poles are equally as effective. If you're buddies with a legislative assistant on the Hill, you're probably going to get what you need said to your senator said. But similarly, if you're the guy calling the staff member's office 5 times a day, your message is probably going to be delivered just as equally. But at the same time, I'm not encouraging you to pester and annoy influential people. I am instead encouraging you to develop a relationship with them by being a resource. They deal with a lot of subjects, and the more information, the more quality information you can give them, the better they'll be at doing their jobs, and they like being good at their jobs. So next is prep work. Like any endeavor, preparation is key. So what you're going to want to bring to your lobby meeting are 5 things. Number 1, your contact information, which you should print clearly at the top of your of the following items. Then those being a 1-pager on the background of the conflict, a 1-pager on the history, and then a 1-pager on the policy asks that you're seeking. Then any relevant legislation, and Mac is going to touch on that. That would be if there was a specific bill that could influence the region, or the country directly, and you would just print out the language of that bill, highlighting the relevant areas, because there's usually a lot of fat in those, and it's a smaller relevant area. And then finally, bring photos of events, letters from other constituents. You want to demonstrate that you are not alone in this, because our voices are always amplified by other voices. So just showing that it is important to your member's district, to your member's state, and to the community will really get you a lot more attention. Then I just want to give you a little confidence boost. My first lobby meeting was very nerve-wracking. And 10 minutes before I went into it, strangely enough, the person who taught me how to lobby was Angelina Jolie's brother, the one who made out with her on the red carpet. But he became an advocate for all things human rights. And he's the guy who taught me and took me to my first lobby meeting. And the last thing he said before he kind of turned the mic over to me and I walked into then Senator Levin's office, he said, "They work for you, don't let them forget it, and you don't forget it. That everything in that office you own, from the copier to the desks they're sitting at." And that's really true. Elected officials really need you to like them because their jobs directly depend on it. They need the support of the community, and you represent the community, not only by being an active voice, but representing other active voices. And then another confidence boost is you are very knowledgeable, and don't forget it. I think we get wrapped up in a movement that encourages and really almost necessitates that you really understand the ins and outs of every nuanced piece of history and policy, and that's awesome. And let that empower you, because understand that most people that walk into those offices don't know anything, and honestly, a lot of the staffers don't know a whole bunch either. So you already know a lot more about the Central African Republic than they do. Most likely, there's the caveat that they might actually know something. Maybe they were an African Studies major. That would be nice. But odds are you're going to be a lot smarter on this subject than they are. So take a couple deep breaths. Remember that they have to like you, and they want you to like them, and that you know more than you think you do. All right. So every meeting begins with a handshake and hello. The way you introduce yourself is critical. So you're going to introduce yourself. You're going to tell them that you're a constituent. A lot of times students don't actually end up voting in the district where they go to school. Doesn't matter. Pretend you do. They are not going to give a shit about you if you don't vote for them. So tell them where you live. Be specific. Name the street you live on. Name the intersection you live near. Use landmarks. Be as specific as possible. Make them feel like you know the community and you know the area, maybe even better than they do. And then tell them why genocide or the conflict in the Central African Republic is important to you. Tie it into a narrative, how you got involved in the movement, what values brought you here. Connect with them on an emotional level, because this is a very human issue, and the more that you can make them connect to you as a vessel of that issue, the more they'll connect and want to help you change the situation. Then you're going to introduce your constituency. Tell them why genocide is important to your community. So for the example of my district, Dearborn has the largest Arab American population in the United States, so I use Syria as an entry point when I'm talking to elected officials. And that's really tangible because all of the Arab Americans in Dearborn are really concerned about Syria, and a lot of them are going to vote based on what's going on. So it makes it really real to the staffer. And then tell them and show them specific communities, specific organizations that you've partnered with or that back you, specific leaders who you've talked to and have been supportive, if not explicitly given you their support. And be specific. Name names. Name drop like you don't care. Because geography and names is everything in politics. And the more people who you know, the better off and the more influential you're going to be. All right, so give thanks. You're here to develop a relationship, get off on the right foot. Thank the member of Congress for their past work on genocide. This is going to take a little bit of research into their voting history. And it doesn't have to just be genocide. It can be positive things that they've done in the region of Africa, the continent of Africa, or honestly the developing world, if you have to grasp. Just make some kind of connection and say thank you for their service in a very specific way. And you want to do it in a specific way because you're not only thanking them, what you're really doing is showing them that you're paying attention and that you know exactly how they vote on these issues. Then thank the member of Congress for their committee work and leadership. So every member serves on one or more committees or has a leadership position in the party. Thank them for that specific work on the committee or their place within their party. It strokes their ego. It shows that you know how cool they are, but really it shows you know exactly what power they have to help. So once you've been polite and shown them that you know what's going on, give a little bit of background. Brian gave an incredibly in-depth and incredibly well thought out background of the conflict, but that is not what you are going to be bringing. You're going to start with a question. Simply ask, how familiar are you with the Central African Republic? If they know a ton, great. They probably won't. So you're going to give them just a rundown, only giving them the facts that are relevant to your policy asks. So you're not going to go back to colonial African history. While it is critical to understanding the conflict, it is only gonna make them confused. So stick to the immediate background and the current conflict, and feel free to refer to your notes. But most importantly, be brief and be simple. Finally, or I should not say finally, you're going to get to your asks. And this is debatably the most important part. It is definitely one of two of the most important parts of a meeting. Here you're going to be direct and specific. You're going to refer to legislation by bill name and number, which is attached to every piece of legislation. And you're going to know who supports the bill. It's usually introduced and sponsored by a number of representatives or senators. And then if you hear anything relevant through news or blogs or social media, the more names you can drop who work on the Hill, the better you are. But at the very least, you can publicly find who introduced it and who sponsors it. And finally, be a resource. Give the staffer the one-pager of asks. You're going to bring a second copy for them with your printed contact information on it, and give a copy of the legislation highlighting the specific and relevant sections. You really want to help them do their job. The easier you can make it, the more likely they will be to help you. Okay, then questions and concerns. So this is your developing a relationship. It has to be a two-way street. So you're going to ask, do you have any questions? And it is critical that you are comfortable not knowing the answer. Practice not knowing the answer. Be confident saying, you know what, I don't know that offhand, but I would be happy to get back to you. They're going to appreciate that. They themselves don't know everything. And keep the conversation on track. So if they're hesitant to support you, they're likely to wander and kind of try to earn your respect and your admiration for their boss by talking about things that are only somewhat related to what you're asking for. Listen, nod respectfully, and then veer the conversation back on track. You are here for one reason, and the more you can talk about that reason, and the more you can get them to talk about the reason, the better. Then finally, if they seem hesitant, be direct. Ask them explicitly, what can you do to help them get this ask delivered to their boss. It might be that they need more information. It might be that they need more evidence that this is important to the district or the state, and that is fine. You can follow up with them later. If they do want the in-depth history, you can get that to them. We have those resources. If they want more evidence of constituent support, go back home, gather up your roommates and your neighbors, take a quick picture, attach it to an email. This isn't a one-off. You have the opportunity to continue this meeting after it's over. Then this is what I think is the most important part of any lobby meeting, is the follow-up. And follow-up starts at the meeting. You're going to write down every question they ask. And you are then going to set up a specific time the following week to give them a call. You're going to have them look at their schedule and give you an actual block of 15 minutes where you can talk on the phone. And then you're going to give them your contact information. You're going to get their card again. And just really emphasizing that it be a specific time so that they can't blow you off. Then when you get home, within 24 hours, shoot them an email. Thank them for their time. They're very busy. They're very stressed out. Show appreciation for the job they do. And attach all of the materials you brought to the meeting. So one pager, and so they have an electronic copy, legislation, so they have an electronic copy. So if in the 24 hours since you last saw them, they lost their hard copies, they have them again. And you're going to put your phone number in there. Once again, just really, the more times you can hit them with the same information, the more likely it's going to stick. Then you're going to give them a call at the time you agreed upon 1 week later. You're going to have all of the information that they requested, have it ready, have it organized, be comfortable with it so that you can deliver it well within 15 minutes, because phone calls get uncomfortable after that. And then after that, shoot them another email. Thank them for their time on the phone. Give them all the information again. The more times you hit them, the more likely it's going to be to sink in. So that's follow-up. Now, just to recap quickly, and I encourage you guys to ask questions at any point. The first thing you do after you schedule your meeting is set goals. You're there to advocate, you're there to declare urgency, but you're also there to make an influential friend, and a friend who has the ear of a policymaker. You are going to prepare. You're going to gather your materials. You're going to do research on the member of Congress and on the conflict itself. Then when you get there, you're going to introduce yourself and you're going to introduce your constituency. You're going to share your values so that they can connect, and you're also going to share the numbers, the evidence that they need to listen to what you have to say, because there are voters who are making decisions based on that. Then you're going to thank them. You're going to show gratitude, but you're also going to show them that you're paying attention to how the system works, but also how they vote, and that you're watching what they do. Then you're going to give background, be brief, stick to the immediate issue, and then you're going to deliver your ask. Again, be specific. Refer to specifics. And give them specific documents. Then you listen, ask questions, be direct. Don't be hesitant to be a little bit too explicit. Get them to say what's holding them back. And then finally, you're going to follow up. You're going to send that email 24 hours after, and going to give a call at a time you guys agreed on. The whole thing is probably only going to take 20 to 30 minutes. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid. And the more times you do it, the more fun it gets, and the better you get. So that is Lobbying 101. And now I'm going to pass it on to our lovely Mac, who is going to talk about the actual asks that you can deliver when you're in the meeting.
Great. Thanks so much, Zach, for that presentation. And definitely we will have time for questions. I'm just going to go through this really quickly since I know it's already 10:25. So the main policy points that we're pushing for throughout this campaign, we have 3 of them. So the first is to fund the Complex Crises Fund at $100 million. And so I believe right now it's at about $50 million. But this is basically a very critical international fund. It enables USAID and other US agencies to undertake rapid prevention, stabilization, and response activities in countries of concern. So this is an ask that is actually wider than CAR, but last year it really helped to get CAR into a more stable point than it could have otherwise been. And there are a lot of case studies to go along with that. Um, and then the second ask is to fund USAID's permanent presence on the ground in CAR. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of short term rotations of staff, which is just not sufficient if we want regional stability. So that is a very important thing to push for. And then the final thing, which you would not bring up if you were talking to someone in the House of Representatives, but if you are meeting with a senator's office, you would push for this, is a full Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing on the CAR crisis. And so basically, what we've been told by high level US officials is that CAR is falling off the radar. Last year, it was kind of all over the news. There were a lot of current events that officials were paying attention to because they thought that CAR was going to fall into crisis. But right now, it's kind of fallen off the radar. And so this is a way to get very high level officials talking to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about the crisis in CAR. So those are the main asks. You can find more detail about that in the CAR Week starter kit, which Zach told you a little bit about. If you need access to it and haven't seen it yet, you can take a look on our Facebook, or you can email info@standnow.org. So those are the main things. I really hope that you guys are getting ready to put together some actions on your campuses. We'll be sending out some more information about CAR Week, which is coming up the week of March 30th. There will be a lot of daily actions that you can take as an individual, and we're also encouraging you to mobilize your campuses and communities. So feel free to email Brian and Zach and I at any time if you have any questions, or your regional organizer is always an incredible resource for you. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. We'll be on the line for another minute or two. But thanks so much for attending.
I am also sitting in the astronomy department of the University of Michigan, so if anyone has any astronomy questions, feel free to ask those as well.
And I happen to be sitting in the emergency medical department of the GWU hospital. And so if anyone has any questions about emergency medicine, I'm here to answer.
But don't get too graphic, because I just ate.
Oh, well.
Really, we have a wealth of knowledge in this on this panel, so. Great. Well, if there aren't any questions at the moment, then we will close. Feel free again to email us at any time, and we'll be sending out a short survey to you guys after the webinar is over. So that'll give us some information on kind of how the webinar went and what you would like to see in the future. So thanks everyone again for coming.
Good night, y'all.
All right.